geographical and also the administrative division. And in this presentation, I will first give a brief overview of how Chinese civilization formed and developed over time. Then I will move to China's physical geography, climate, and natural resources. And then I will explain how China is divided into different administrative regions, including province, autonomous regions, and municipalities, and special administrative regions. And first is the early human settlements in what is now China developed mainly along the Yellow River, and it also the Yangtze River. Those Neolithic culture gradually formed more complex societies. Over time, they evolved into the earliest dynasties, traditionally known as Xia, Shang, Zhou. And during those early periods, people developed agriculture and learned how to work with bronze and created some of the earliest forms of Chinese writing. And also at this time, early state structures began to appear. An idea of a more unified Chinese civilization slowly emerged around those river valleys. And so from the very beginning, rivers of cultures and early dynasties shaped the foundation of Chinese identity. And then it was Emperor China from Qing to Qing, and China was first unified as a centralized emperor under the Qing dynasty in 221 before Common Era. The Qing emperor standardized the writing system, currency, and legal codes, and built early section of what later became the Great Wall. The following Han Dynasty expanded the empire and opened the Silk Road, connecting China with Central Asia and beyond other countries. Later, dynasties such as Tang and Song made a great achievement in culture, technology, and trade, including painting, gunpowder, and advance in agriculture. And then it's Ming. Ming Dynasty rebuilt and extended the Great Wall and sent maritime voyages to the Indian Ocean. And then is the Qing. Qing Dynasty ruled by Manchu. It's created a large multi-ethnic empire, but gradually went into decline in the 19th century. And this long emperor period lasted for more than 2,000 years and deeply shaped Chinese culture, societies, and political traditions. And then is the 19th and early 20th century. China experienced dramatic transformations. Western industry powers forced China to open its ports through the Opium Wars and imposed unequal treaties. China lost territories and special rights to foreign powers, which is often remembered as the center of humiliation. At this time, internal peasant uprising and rebellions further weakened the Qing government, like the picture is 1911 revolution that is happening in Shanghai, Nanjing Road. And also in this context, reformers and revolutionaries began to call for a new political system. In 1911, the Shanghai Revolution finally overthrew the Qing dynasty and ended emperor rules. In 1912, the Republic of China was established. However, the new republic faced many challenges, including warlordism, foreign pressure, and political instability. This set of the stage for the conflict and change for the 20th century. As for as a map, we can see that there, during that time, there was a lot of warlords. They hold a different place. And then it's briefly summarize of modern Chinese history. In 1912, Republic China established, and after that, in 1937 to 1945, China fights for the Sino-Japanese War, which later becomes part of the World War II in Asia, and this war brings massive destruction and loss of life. And during 1945 to 1949, after Japan's defeat, the civil war between the nationalist and communist regimes. And in 1949, the People's Republic of China is officially established on the mainland. The nationalist government retreats to Taiwan. And 1950s to 1970s, the new state carries out early socialist campaigns and major political movements, which deeply affect society and the economy. Then, as the 1978, China begins the policy of reform and opening, led by Deng Xiaoping, and it's a rapid economic growth during that time, and also make China integrate into the global economy. And then it's 1997 to and 1999, Hong Kong and Macau return and become the special administrative regions. In 21st century China undergoes fast urbanization and becomes a major global economic power. And this timeline shows out how China moved from empire to republic, then to a socialist state, and then nowadays to a rapidly developing global actor. Then it's a more longer timeline of Chinese history, from earliest dynasty all the way to the modern People Republic of China. At the beginning of the timeline, we have the traditional early dynasties such as Xia, Shang, Zhou. During those periods, Chinese civilization took shape along the Yellow River with the development of writing, bronze, and technology. Also, it's the early forms of the state power. And moving forward is the major emperor dynasty like Qin and Han, which first unified China and built a centralized bureaucracy. The Tang and Song, which were golden age of culture and technology. Then it's Yuan, Ming, Qing, which expanded the territory and ruled over a large multi-ethnic empire. And during that time, China has a lot of different ethnic groups. Until now, still have 46 different ethnic groups. And at the end of timeline, we move into the modern era, the collapse of Qing dynasty in 1911, the establishment of the Republic of China in 1912, and finally founding the PRC in 1949. This timeline helps us to see how today's China get evolution from the beginning to now, and then is the simple outline of China after a long time evolution. So the Chinese map is like this, and the left is the simplified regional map, and the right is a more detailed political map with provinces and major cities. And then is about China's physical geography. China is one of the world's largest country with a land area about 9.6 million square kilometers. are lower plants and coastal area. Those foreign influence not only the climate and the environment, but also have a great influence on the population and agriculture and economy. And China also has 14 neighboring countries like North Asia have North Korea, Russia, Mongolia, and Central Asia have Tajikistan, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. And also in South Asia we have Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan. In Southeast Asia we have Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam. Then is the major landforms. While looking closely, we can see the different important landforms in the southwest. The Tibetan plateaus is the world's highest plateau and acts as the source of region for many major Asian rivers. Along the southern boundary, the Himalaya from the huge mountain wall, including Mount Everest, the highest peak on Earth, at 8,848 meters. And in the northwest, mostly the basin and the desert. And to the north, there's with the border with Mongolia, there has a Gobi Desert. And by contrast, the eastern part, such as the North China Plain and Yangtze River Delta, are more fragile and suitable for agriculture. So as a result, those areas have very high population density and are more home to many major cities. And those are some different landscape of China. Well, then is China's climate patterns. Because China is really a big and large country, so the weather can feel completely different in different places. For example, in Kunming is really different to the other place because Kunming is as a spring city. The temperature are always mild around all year, and also has Hainan. Hainan is the far south feel like the summer, even in winter. I think the temperature is almost like 26 degrees. Then is the major rivers. The Yangtze River is the longest river in Asia and an important economic artery. It flows from the Tibetan Plateau across central China to the East China Sea, supporting major cities, agriculture, and transport. And the Yellow River, often we call it the cradle of Chinese civilization because many early states developed along its middle and lower reaches. However, it's also known as the flood history, which caused a lot of fertile soils and serious disasters. And in the south is the Pearl River Delta, and also there has other important rivers like Mekong and Yalujiang and Heilongjiang. And also after that is some nature resources. China are rich in natural resources, although they are unevenly distributed. The country has large reserve of coal, which has historically been a key energy source for industrialization. And China also has a significant oil and natural gas field, as well as enormous hydroelectric potential. For example, the Three George Dam in the Yangtze River. China is the leading producer of rare earth elements, which are crucial for many modern technologies, from smartphones to electric vehicles. At the same time, China has limited per capita land, but it still maintains major agriculture output, especially rice and wheat. Managing the balance between energy demand and environment protection and food security is therefore a big issue in China's development nowadays. And after that is the administrative structure. At the provincial level, China's territory is organized into several types of units: province, autonomous, and municipalities, and also special administrative regions, and central unitary system with regional variation. China is a centralized unitary state, so the central government in Beijing has ultimate authority. However, there's also has other regional variation in law, culture, and economic policies, especially in autonomous regions and SARs. The structure reflects the national unity and the reality of regional diversity in China. And then is the province and the regional diversity. Provinces differ geographically and culturally. Many eastern provinces are coastal economy hubs with large cities, dense populations, and strong links to the global trade. And many western provinces are characterized by plateaus, desert, and mountains. They have lower population density. Like those cities along the sea, there are more like there are more people live there, and somehow they are much more less poverty than the other side. Like, and also the map shows that the northeast quarter, like Inner Mongolia and Ningxia and those parts, I think those parts rarely have people live there, and only some farmers and live there. And many province boundaries have historical roots. Also means those provinces often align with the traditional cultural regions or administrative units from empire times. Then is the autonomous regions. In China, we have 5 autonomous regions. It's Guangxi, Inner Mongolia, Ningxia, and Xinjiang and Tibet. Those regions are intended to reflect ethnic and cultural diversity as they are home to large populations to the minority. Because China has 56 different ethnic groups, so for those 5 parts live the most minority ethnic groups. Because in China there are more than 99% are Han group. And in the autonomous regions also have some their own rights and their own tradition and culture, also their own language. Then is the municipalities. China has 4 municipalities that are directly under the central government. It's Beijing, Shanghai, Tianjin, and Chongqing. Those large urban centers have the same administrative rank as province. They are really major political, economical, or the key part of their location. Like Beijing is the capital city for China, and Tianjin is the important port in north, and Shanghai is for its economical and financial growth. Chongqing is the key city in the southwest. So each city includes not only the urban core but also surrounding the suburban and rural districts. The special statutes allow those cities to have different policy or strategies to the other cities. And as the special administrative regions, also called SARs. First is Hong Kong, returns from British from 1997. Hong Kong and Macau are the most important part in China because for their economic and political role. And SARs illustrate the China administrative systems can accommodate regions with different history, background, and economic models within one country. As like one country, two systems. But the system will only keep 50 years when when China and the former colonies had an agreement. Then is the summary. China's geography from high plateaus and desert to fertile river valleys and long coastlines shaped Chinese economic development, population, transportation, and also the cultural diversity. Also, China's history shows the long continuing form from ancient to nowadays, from the earliest Xiashangzhou, then to the emperor era, then to the people of Republic China. I think this goes through more than 5,000 years, and this kind of dramatic transformations shaped how China looks today. And the administrative structures, autonomous regions and municipalities and special administrative regions reflect the diversity and organize a very large and complex territory under the unified state. And those history and geography, also the administrative division, make China can help us for better understanding for the economic and the current position and role in the world that China doing today. And that's my part.
All right. Mohammed, can you stand over there? Do you have to stand over there or?
Good morning, everyone. My part is Chinese domestic politics and society, focusing on three major areas in China. My first major area is Chinese politics system and society and human rights, and also Chinese approach to Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Tibet. This presentation will help us understand how Chinese internal political structure shapes its social environment and its policies toward regions it considers domestic affairs. Well, China operates under a highly centralized one party system led by the Chinese Communist Party or CCP. Well, to understand Chinese domestic governance, we must first recognize that the CCP has ruled the country since 1949. It remains the central authority controlling all major state institutions. Then China does not hold a competitive multi-party elections. Only CCP-approved candidates can run for public office, which means political competition is extremely limited. Then also China officially identifies itself as a socialist one-party state, a structure that the government argues ensures stability and long-term planning. While this system provides consistency, it also uh, concentrates political power in the hands of single organizations. The CCP's influence extends across the government, the military, and the judiciary. But in practice, nothing significant happens without the party's approval or supervision. This model follows the principle of democratic centralism, where decisions are made at the top and then implemented throughout this country. This enables China to pursue ambitious development strategies and maintain a political unity. However, the downside is a lack of political pluralism. Ordinary citizens have limited opportunities to influence leadership or publicly challenge political decisions. Then, although China formally has a legislature, the National People's Congress or NPC, its practice role is limited. The NPC is described as the highest legislative body, but typically approves policies that have already been decided by the CCP. The judicial system also lacks independence. Court must follow party guidance, especially in sensitive political or national security cases. This creates a state structure where legal and legislative institutions operate under party authority rather than acting as independent checks on power. Well, then Chinese society has advanced rapidly over the past several decades. The country has lifted millions out of poverty, created world-class infrastructure, and become one of the largest digital economies. However, human rights limitations remain a significant concern. Like surveillance is widespread, internet censorship is strict, freedom of expression is heavily limited, and ethnic and religious groups like Uyghurs and Tibetans face increased state control. The Chinese government defends these measures as necessary for national stability, but international observers argue that these practices restrict basic freedoms. This balance between economic success and restricted rights is one of the defining characteristics of modern China. Now, well, Taiwan represents the most complex and sensitive issue in China's domestic politics. China views Taiwan as an inseparable part of its territory under the One China principle. From Beijing's perspective, the Chinese Civil War never officially ended. Then the Communist Party won the mainland, while the nationalist government retreated to Taiwan. Because of this, the CCP considers Taiwan's reunification a historically mission and a core part of national identity. However, in practice, Taiwan operates as a self-governing democracy. It has own president, own military, own constitution, and free and competitive elections, and also a strong separate identity among the population. Many Taiwanese people increasingly identify themselves as a Taiwanese rather than Chinese, which makes reunification more difficult for them. Why? Why Taiwan is a domestic issue for Beijing? Because Beijing sees any move towards independence as a threat to territorial integrity. The CCP also believed that losing Taiwan would signal the weakness and could inspire separatist movements elsewhere. Therefore, China used a combination of economic pressure, military pressure near the Taiwan Strait, then diplomatic isolation to reduce Taiwan's international space, then political messaging to emphasize reunification as unavoidable. Why the Taiwan issue is so sensitive? Well, there are three main reasons. Nationalism, reunification is tied to Chinese nationalism and historical memory. The second one is security. Taiwan is geographically strategic, located near major shipping lanes and U.S. alliance. Then third one is global politics. The U.S. and other countries support Taiwanese democracy and oppose unilateral change to the status quo, then leading to tensions between China and Western powers. Well, Hong Kong was promised a high degree of autonomy under the one country, two system framework after its return in 1997. Then, however, Beijing has increased control over the region, especially after passing the national security law in 2020, which limited protests, tightened surveillance, and reduced political freedoms. Beijing argues that these measures restore order. Critics say that undermine Hong Kong's autonomy. Well, Tibet has been under Chinese control since the 1950s. Tensions continue between Tibetan culture, identity, and Beijing's policy of political integration. The government restricts political dissent and closely monitors religious activities, especially those related to the Dalai Lama. For Beijing, maintaining control of Tibet is seen as a vital to national unity. In my conclusion, Chinese domestic politics are defined by a centralized one-party system. Under the CCP, the country has achieved remarkable economic growth, but political freedoms and human rights remain limited. This case of Taiwan and Hong Kong, the case of Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Tibet highlight how strongly China prioritizes sovereignty and territorial unity, especially the Taiwan issue, which remains the most sensitive and complex. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shanawaz, and I'm going to talk about China's geopolitics and foreign policy, and I will also try to explain the economics throughout the presentation. So, since China is a pretty big country, they border 14 countries, they have a lot of geopolitics to follow, and they have a long history of centralized government. So, doing the foreign policy during those times wasn't a very big deal. Their foreign policy is shaped by national interest and great power aspiration. So their goal has been to trace evolution through key historical phases. So if we start with the ancient civilization and early geopolitics, China used to be related to Silk Road. For example, if you see on the map that from China, the road led through Central Asia, then to Middle East, and till to Europe. They had a lot of things to trade, for example, silk, tea, porcelain, paper, and using this Silk Road, they traded these materials to Europe. They also had cultural relations like Buddhism, and to spread Buddhism, they used the maritime Silk Road, like in the Southeast Asia. And they had diplomatic missions and also tribute missions throughout this commerce. And with this Silk Road trade, China became really really rich. They became the middle kingdom of the earth. But at the start of the 19th century, there was a development of big trade ships in the European countries. And since they started using ships to trade, the Silk Road practically became dead. So China had a lot of materials to trade, and the European nations wanted to trade with them. But they didn't really had much to offer to the Chinese, since China is a pretty big country. They already had everything. So the British introduced opium as an addiction material, and when China tried to ban it, they sent their armies there, and they had 2 opium wars where China suffered a humiliating defeat and had to open up to the Europeans. And then Japan saw all of this as their neighbor, and they followed exactly what the Europeans did. They acquired Taiwan and Manchuria through invasion. So because of this humiliation, nationalism in China grew a lot, and they had to open up to European countries, and their economy was kind of going down. And because of all of this, I think at 1911, the dynasty fell, and during that time in 1917, there was the Bolshevik Revolution, and China saw all of this. In 1990, there was the May 4th movement in China, which triggered a massive call for modernization. And after USSR became a dominant power in the Europe, they sent their agents to train the Chinese communists. And with them, Mao Zedong was trained at Beijing with the Chinese Communist Party, and they had an ideological unity with the USSR during the Cold War. But the problem started when their ideologies shifted. For example, USSR wanted coexistence with the West, but CCP wanted that a rival revolution or at least abolish the capitalist system. They also had problems when Nikita Khrushchev criticized Stalin. So there was the Sino-Soviet split. In 1969, they almost went to war because of the border split. And however, during that time, US was monitoring all of the situation. So for US, it was a key strategy to isolate the USSR. And for China, they still didn't get any recognition from the US, and their economy was kind of isolated. So both countries had a lot to gain. So by the ping pong diplomacy incident, China gained the support of the US, and both countries recognized each other, and China got a permanent membership at the UN. So after Mao Zedong's death in 1976, Deng Xiaoping came into power. He established four special economic zones. So we already heard of all his quotes. I think one of his quotes was, "We should let some people get rich first." So he opened up a lot of four economic zones and encourages European businesses to establish their factories in this region. His shift was from ideology to pragmatism. Like, we can do it, we have to work together to get rich first. And his focus was mainly on domestic stability. And since China has been isolated economically for a long time, he wanted global economic integration. So, because of his policies in the first 2000, at the start of the 2000s, China rose as an economic power. They practically manufactured everything, and they had this title called World Factory. However, during that time, with all this money, they started their military modernization, but they followed a strategy that they don't become a threat to the neighbors, at least not yet. So they also had a lot of energy demands for their factories, so they secured deals with the Middle East and Africa to keep the oil flowing. They used their soft power tools like Confucius Institute, Language Institute to gain influence around the world. So after the economic rise, they launched the Belt and Road Initiative. It's the biggest infrastructure project of the world. So it was launched in 2013 by Xi Jinping. About 150 countries are participating in this infrastructure network. This is kind of like all roads lead to Rome. So, but their goal here is all trade routes lead to China. So, but there's still criticisms like transparency issue, environmental harm, and also it's too big of a project to succeed. So for this Belt and Road to succeed, they have a global loan strategy. So till now, China gives out loan as an alternative to IMF and World Bank. However, the countries they choose had one particular trait. They are all part of like an authoritarian government, and when authoritarian governments comes into power, they have a tendency to invest in infrastructure to show that to the people that they're making a lot of progress. So China lent out a lot of loans to the countries like Sri Lanka or a lot of African countries. However, some few years ago, Sri Lanka defaulted on the loan, and it was characterized as a debt trap. But since Sri Lanka, there has not been a single country who has been in this situation. So with all this influence, China helped establish the BRICS. So BRICS used to be without South Africa, and it was done by Western economics in the 2001. It used to be called BRICS, but in 2010, South Africa joined, and after that it's called BRICS. And they are trying to create a new multipolar world. Their main target is to end the monopoly of dollar dominance. They're trying to establish their own currencies as a medium of trade. And also China has a particular interest in Africa. If you look at the map in 2000, France used to be the major trading partner there. However, now it's all over China. So Africa is full of all the rare minerals that we need for our semiconductor industry. China has a dominance on this sector. So whenever also they have their first overseas military base in Djibouti, they have been major partner in infrastructure, railway, post, telecom, and they have also created employment opportunities, scholarships, and also medical aid. But there's still concerns like labor rights, environmental issues, and political influences. There was an incident. China helped create the new headquarters of African Union, but somehow during the middle of the night, the servers of the African Union were connecting to another server in China. When they explained this problem, China tried to fix that problem for free. Okay, so because of all this influence from China, they now have tensions with the West. So during this time, the problems have been mainly in the semiconductors, AI, cybersecurity, and also in the South China Sea territory. China claims a lot of land in these territories, and US is backing the other countries that China has conflict with. And also, they have core issue with Taiwan. So Taiwan is not recognized by the US, but US sends their full military support to Taiwan, and this has escalated the conflict in the region. And they also have a negative clash between the rules based of the Western-led order and also like China's multipolar order. So because of this, there have been economic decoupling and sanctions, escalating conflicts. So currently there have been these 5 key points of China's foreign policy. So national rejuvenation by 2049. So this term is called China Dream, which was used by the first Communist Party members, and Xi Jinping emphasized that by 2049 they want to establish this dream. So they want to secure supply chain and reduce Western influence. They want to expand yuan internalization and economic alliances. They want to protect their sovereignty in domestic issues like Hong Kong, Xinjiang, Tibet, Taiwan, and they want to strengthen leadership in the global south. So in conclusion, so China's history has been transforming from the victim of imperialism to a rising challenger of the US. So this outcome between the US and China will shape the future global order, and China's challenge has throughout been balancing growth, diplomacy, and security. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hassan, and although my colleagues here have explained about China a lot, but I'll try to let you know a little bit more about this. My topic is China and its geopolitics, geographic challenges, and global influence. So China is a very big country, and right now they're like 96 million square kilometers. This is the largest, one of the largest countries in the world, and to share borders with other countries, they have to have the geopolitics and the foreign policies that we're going to talk about right now. So let's go over it.
Do you have the pointer? Yeah, you have the pointer. You can use the pointer.
So, the geographic foundation of China's power. So, China's huge territory, like as I say, 9.6 million square kilometers, is one of the largest countries globally and has a major influence on regional and international affairs. So, from the peaks of the Himalayas to the vast expanses of the Gobi Desert and the fertile basins of the Yangtze and Yellow rivers, China has their own history, and it's really impressive. And historically, these natural barriers protected China, but also it made China isolated from other countries. Today, its unique geography continues to influence its regional interests and border concerns, particularly along its western and southern peripheries, which are important to its strategy. So the geographic foundation of China's power. China is one of the world's largest countries, as I've said, and President Xi Jinping here, he introduced the idea of a peripheral community of shared future. This means China wants stronger political and economic integration with neighboring countries. Why? To say to counter the Western influence and to ensure border stability and to build regional leadership before expanding power further away. They are not being a threat yet, but with lots of power in hand, there might be. Border provinces become stepping stones to regional dominance and then global ambition. So China has a lot to do in this sense. So the domestic challenges. One major issue is economic involution, meaning too many companies in China are making the same products. This makes China's companies lose their profits, and there is too much competition. If one company makes one thing, another will make that same thing with lower price. So the customer will win, but the people who are in the business, they will lose the profit and their economy will go down. This is also worsened by the US-China trade tensions, and China must find a way to balance this thing. Otherwise, their businesses will not do as good as they used to do before. And social and environmental pressures that China also struggles with is the air pollution and ecosystem damage. The pollution in China is really at a dangerously high level. All the factories and the workplaces, they produce things that are damaging the environment. Although China made some steps to lower their carbon dioxide emissions, but this hasn't been completed, and there's no chance that this will be completed in the near future. And the aging population and the shrinking workforce. China's people, their longevity is longer. They live for a longer period of time, and that is also a huge downside to the workforce, because older people cannot work, and the younger people, they tend to not work like the older generation there. And this shrinking workforce is a huge issue China is facing right now. And ongoing real estate crisis is harming the middle class. The real estate thing is good for the upper class, but the middle class, they are not doing better for this, and they claim that this is worsening their situation rather than benefiting themselves. Like, these things that creates the public dissatisfaction, and this is an internal issue that China doesn't want to let out, but people know, and it's all over the internet. So China's expanding global footprint. China is expanding its global influence through the Belt and Road Initiative (BRI), as my colleague has said before. This infrastructure and trade project connects Asia, Africa, Latin America, and other regions. And beyond economic ties, China's establishment of its first overseas military base in Djibouti shows China can project military power, showing its interest in securing resources and stabilizing important regions like Afghanistan. This mix of economic power and military presence shows China's broad approach to global influence, and this also shows that China can do many things that they are not doing right now. Global reactions and regional dynamics. Latin American nations are increasingly trading with China, often surpassing the US. So this is showing that China is becoming more economically dominant than US, which was like dominant for a lot of years, the USA. And the Brazil-China commercial ties, despite political fluctuations, Brazil-China relations remain robust. Like the commercial ties that influence both domestic policies and international alignments. US-China rivalry, the intensifying US-China rivalry fuels competition for influence across Africa, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific. And like my colleague said, the USA goes to help countries that China is in clash with, and China is doing the opposite. So China is increasing their horizon, and USA is just waiting for chance, that seems like here. And the balancing partnerships, China is doing whatever they can best with the countries they're in business with, so that their support so that the countries will be in China's favor whenever the time is necessary and whenever they need. media and narrative control, shaping global perceptions. Domestically, the government controls media to maintain stability. So this is a communist country, and that's common. The nationalist content promotes the idea that China is rising and the US is weakening. But internationally, China uses culture, media, and visa policies to improve its global image. Especially in neighboring countries, China tries to shape positive narrative that supports its international goals. The geopolitical gravity of China in a multipolar world. Factors behind its rise is like the large population and industrial strength. This is like a huge factor. The population is a workforce and they're using it well so that they can challenge the Western dominance that's been there for more than decades, many decades. Structural realities is like they focus on things that matters the most before doing the improvements on anything. The structures are the fundamental things, and China has focused on them and they're still doing it. And the BRI project, this is also going to the other countries to show that they can do things that goes well. China's rise like fundamentally challenges the Western dominated global world order. China is right now, we can say they are economically number one country in the world, and everything we buy and see is mostly made in China. So we can say that economically China has surpassed USA, but militarily and the other things they haven't done that yet. So China is playing low, and they're going to do things that will eventually be open whenever they're in a position that they can be comfortable in, and they're just waiting for that time and doing things in a good way till now. In conclusion, geography gives China their protection and long-term stability. The domestic challenges still threaten China, but they have plans for it, and they're going to conquer their challenges, and this will show the world that China can do things in a better way. The narrative control strengthens China's images and influences for all over the world. And for navigating the future, a deep understanding of China's multifaceted geopolitics is crucial for navigating the complexities of global international affairs. China has done what other countries are ambition to do. So to do things better, it's better to read China and follow these footsteps, I think. So thank you very much.
Oh, well done, guys. You've actually divided the topics very well, so you've covered a lot of different areas. Because we're actually running out of time, so we're going to skip the Q&A session. I've uploaded the final term exam questions at the LMS, so you can have a look. You can get prepared. Next week, alright, and next week we're doing UK. We're doing South Asia and Southeast Asia, so Tracy, RT, Arafat, Hassan. Oh, Hassan did it. So Tracy, RT, and Arafat will present. Okay, so get prepared. Alright, well done.
Professor, when is the final exam?
Final exam is 22nd Monday.
Somewhere over the middle.